Is it 4:30 now? Yep. Welcome, everyone. This is Monday, June 8th. Welcome to the Legislative Subcommittees. I'm going to call our members right now. Councilor Serino. Councilor Powers. Councilor Zimbudo and Councilor Novosel. So today on the agenda is an ordinance relative to food truck ordinance. Is Dimple Rana present? Hi, Dimple. If you want to take it away, go for it.
Say again, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So we're going to be discussing a food truck ordinance. The Director of Healthy Community Initiative is here. Dimple Rana, do you want to speak for a little bit?
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Morabito. Thank you to the rest of the city councilors and staff who are here today to discuss and have a public hearing for the food truck ordinance, which has been in development for almost about 3 years now. And we've done a lot of research and thinking with multiple departments, not just my own department, which is Healthy Community Initiatives. We've been working alongside with the solicitor's office, the mayor's office, with the licensing clerk, fire, and also health on this ordinance development. In addition, with input from food truck operators themselves, also with some other small businesses and residents. We've done several pilots over the past 2 years and have called those series Summer Nights. And they have been really great learning events to inform the locations that are listed on the ordinance in front of you. And so I'm gonna leave the information there and look forward to further conversation in this week.
Thank you. Do any of the subcommittee members have any questions? Or I know Councilor Serino wanted to make an amendment to the ordinance. Councilor Serino? Unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dimple, thank you, Paul. So basically, I just proposed one amendment, and I had mentioned it at the public hearing a couple months back. I just want to be sure to protect our brick and mortar restaurants, especially now more than ever in light of COVID-19 and the fact that they've been closed for a while. So I just wanted to propose some language to say that within no food truck should be allowed to operate within 250 feet of a brick and mortar restaurant that serves the same type of cuisine. I'm thinking, in by Kimberly Park, there is the Colombian restaurant right across from the T station. So there shouldn't be a food truck serving Colombian food at that location. It wouldn't make sense to have the Kowloon food truck in front of China Roma or by the Legion Lawn, or, with Woody's Pizza right there too, having a pizza truck at the Broadway location. So just something to firm up and protect those brick and mortar places that do need our business and do pay more than what a food truck is bringing into the city. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I hope we'll consider that language change that I submitted to you guys. Thank you.
So, Councilor Serino, Ms. Rana, so this is the amendment that Councilor Serino proposed. It's an amendment to 5.10.040, and no operator of a food truck shall park, stand, or conduct business within a 250-foot radius of a brick and mortar restaurant serving the same cuisine. Are you okay with that?
Could I just interrupt? Could I interrupt?
Councilor Serino, was that worded correctly?
That is worded correctly, and that 250 feet was kind of a generic I really didn't have a method as to how I came up with the 250 feet. If it be recommended either 300 feet or 200 feet, but I do want something in there that will protect within a certain radius. But I think Bob Mara would like to interject. He might have a suggestion.
Sure.
Yeah, that was one of the things during the drafting of this, and we limited the areas where food trucks can operate. And I believe it's section 5.10.050. And Dimple and Paul, if you have if I'm off on that, I'm looking at what I believe is the most recent version of it. And that specifies the areas and the number of trucks that can be located at any given place. And the purpose of those specifically were to, to protect businesses that were already in the area. So I'm just not sure. Does the amendment focus on the type of food or the location? Because the location your restriction is contained within the ordinance.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, through you, it is focused on the type of food per se.
Okay.
I think even with the limitations of the locations, which is great, you have Broadway north of Cheever Street, south of Hyde Street. So if somebody's walking Broadway and they happen to be in front of the Legion and there's a Chinese food truck, but there's also China Roma kind of directly across the street. The same thing with a pizza truck, a truck serving pizza. Woody's Pizza is kind of directly across the street from City Hall and the Legion. So that was my intent, just to prevent the same, if there are brick and mortar restaurants serving the same type of cuisine in that immediate area, I would prefer not to see food trucks that are serving the same type.
Yes.
Mr. Mara, I believe so. From after talking with Jim, I believe they were, in looking at the location, they were all the dedicated spots were organized so they don't interfere with businesses nearby. So I think Council Serino would like to make the amendment of focus on cuisine, not the same cuisine.
Yeah. I get it.
Nearby radius. But I think all the locations are set up far enough from the restaurants strategically, except Cheever Street. That's the only restaurant that's the only location designated that's nearby a Chinese food restaurant or a pizza joint. So I'm not sure.
And
what was that, Mr. Serino?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I was just saying that Broadway was an example, but again, on Bennington Street, you have the Colombian restaurant that's brick and mortar. So if there were a Colombian food truck, the Colombian food truck shouldn't be permitted to go to Bennington Street. That should go to Broadway or another location. And I'm sure Dimple and those who would be making those decisions would make those proper decisions anyway. But just to have it, going forward.
Okay, so, Councilor Guanasso?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I noted in the permitted areas, number 6 Broadway, east side only north of Cheever Street and south of Hyde Street. 4 trucks would be allowed to be there at one time. Now, that to me seems to be a little bit excessive for a highly congested area. And my concern being is, how do you prevent people, as Councilor Serino suggested, and aptly so, that you not sell the same product? You got 4 trucks on a busy main street in our community. How do they not sell one of the products that are either at any one of our restaurants on Broadway, going down to Polo restaurant, going down to Companions, going down to all of them? There's quite a few of them have a diverse menu. How do we protect them?
So, Councilor Guanasso, good point. And I think that goes back to what Councilor Serino spoke about earlier, I think we should focus on, can we, City Clerk Melnick, can you amend that 5.10.040 and amend it where it will reflect cuisines? The same cuisines cannot be in the vicinity of the food trucks serving the same cuisine cannot serve the same cuisine as neighboring businesses or restaurants.
Yes, I have that amendment from Councilor Serino on record.
Okay, excellent. Anyone else on the subcommittee? Any other members of the city council would like to speak?
Councilor Morbido.
President Keith?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo a couple comments. I think that Councilor Serino's amendment was well noted. I'm a fan of, I want to state for the record that I am a fan of food trucks, and I'm glad that hopefully we'll get through this and they'll be regulated in the city properly. I definitely don't want to affect our brick and mortar restaurants. Those come first to me. Those are paying the bulk of the taxes and licensing fees and heavy rents and sometimes mortgages. So I want to make sure we're able to protect them, which I think does a pretty good job of. I agreed with the 4. You know, you have Revere Beach Boulevard, it's 3 miles, and there's allowed 5. And Broadway, which is only a portion of Broadway, it allows 4. So I think that much like some of the other streets, maybe 2 would be more apt. I would ask that we look at that or change that to 2, much like Shirley Ave is 2, and other streets are 2. Bennington Street is 2. I'm not sure why Broadway with more businesses would have more food trucks. And then my only other concern, and I know that this is on one of the notes, is the it says all food truck operators shall provide a sufficient waste receptacle for public use, and it's this said license responsibility to empty. I don't think that that's currently happening, so I just wanted to make sure that there's proper enforcement on removal of the waste. Again, they're paying only $200 annual fee, which is, I'm okay with. I don't want to gouge anyone, but they should be taking the trash with them and not making it a city responsibility. Outside of that, I'm in favor, and I'll be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor McKenna?
thank you. I've gotten a couple of complaints by residents living near Broadway that the food trucks were too close to their houses. And that's all I want to add. I did get a couple of phone calls when the food trucks were in service.
Councilor McKenna, what I would suggest, is that Cheever Street? Do you know the specific location?
Yes.
Cheever Street.
Yes.
Is there, Mr. Mara or Ms. Rana, is there anything we can do to accommodate those residents with that location?
Yes, and we did, when we also, when I heard those reports too. And so the situation is that the food trucks just need to move up and so that there's enough parking. So people are kind of just parking in the middle of the street, and they've been advised many occasions. And then during the farmer's market, when we were running the pilot, we would put out cones, but then cars would move the cones to then also park there. So that's been something that we've been definitely being very careful and paying a lot of attention to. The people who are coming to buy the food are the ones who are blocking one of the residents' driveway. And so in order to fix that is to move the food truck up further in front of the American Legion, so it's closer to Hyde Street and Broadway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKenna. Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't necessarily have anything against food trucks. I think they serve a purpose. I appreciate Councilor Serino's amendment, because the last thing I want these things to do is hurt our businesses. I mean, obviously right now, our restaurants are suffering greatly, but I'm not quite sure $200 is enough of a fee. Now, and I preface that by, we used to charge $2,000 for a transient vendor. Okay, that's a one-time charge per year. Say someone was going to sell Christmas trees or whatever. So I don't know how we go from 2,000 to 200. And we're talking about for the whole year, I think. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fee should be
The
higher.
whole year. Mara, was that yes for the whole year?
The $200 fee was the fee for the permit.
So let me ask, have we
I
checked
think
other cities and towns, and is that what they're charging, is 200 a year? I highly doubt that.
Point of
It's only
information.
speculation.
I think Dimple wants to.
So there,
Mrs. Rada, can you answer that?
yes, so there are a few fees associated. That's just the first fee, right? So there will be a fee also for, so if there's going to be an event, and maybe Maggie can also help me with this too. And if the event wants to bring in more than one food truck, they would have to pay for each food truck. So there would be a cost to submit the application, also for the cost of the license. Then they also have to pay for the health permit. They also have to pay for the fire permit. And in addition, for the food trucks that would get approved by DCR to operate on the beach, they would also have to pay another fee through DCR to also be. So we went back and forth around the costs, and I know I'm open to working with you and see if we need to increase it, but we did consider the cost across the board for these vendors. If anybody else, Maggie, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Not really, no. Food truck licenses in other cities and towns are actually just kind of all over the maps. They're not really a good guide at this point. It's still a fairly new thing, really, for most cities.
Thank you, Maggie. Council Zambudo, are you done with your questions, or do you have more?
No, I think I'm still very uncomfortable with the fee. I don't think it's enough. And, now that I know, I'll do my own research to see what other cities and towns are doing. But I'd be very surprised if we're not the lowest.
Also, let's keep in mind, if we pass this ordinance, we have the power to make amendments, of course, as you all know. So, would any other members like to speak on this before we take a vote? Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Dimple. Right now, if a person applies for a permit from DCR, what is the fee for that permit? And how long is the permit valid for? And
I can help
the
you with
reason
that,
I asked
Counselor.
that question- Pardon me?
It's valid for the entire year. So it's not prorated. You put in the $200 fee, and it's for the year. It's not prorated at all, though. So if you do it at the end of the year, you renew it on the new year.
I kind of agree with Councilor Zambudo. That fee really is minimal when you consider the fact that somebody like Santorini's or Renzo's that pay heavy real estate taxes because of their position on Revere Beach Boulevard. A food truck comes and sets up business 250 feet from them. That doesn't work too well, I don't think.
So, Councilor Powers and Zambudo, are you looking to make an amendment to the fee amount?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see it. $200 is nothing.
You want to leave it? You guys can do your research and we can amend it later on? I can't hear you, Councilor Zambudo. Can you unmute Councilor Zambudo?
Yeah, definitely. I think $1,000, okay, is adequate, at least somewhat adequate, when you're competing with a person that's paying real estate taxes all year long to operate on Revere Beach Boulevard.
Councilman Buda, were you going to say something?
Well, I didn't want to arbitrarily set a number, but, you know, I was gonna try to do some research, but I'd certainly be more comfortable with 1,000 than I am with $200, but
Okay.
I don't want to blow the whole thing up.
Councilor Powers and
If we can
Councilor
do.
Buda, we're gonna leave it out for right now. You got, if you guys can do your due diligence and look up other fees in neighboring cities, and then we can make an amendment.
Point of information. Council
State
Morbido.
point.
Boston charges $500.
$500.
Salem is like $100, and I think south of Boston, Quincy's $250. So I don't think we're that far off. I certainly don't think we should be charging more than Boston for a permit.
I
Well,
think,
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go.
Revere is very unique because of Revere Beach Boulevard. You can't compare Revere Beach Boulevard with Broadway Revere or Broadway anywhere else. People do come there in the good weather, and the businesses down there, they're limited in the time period that they have to make enough money to pay their taxes and water bills and other expenses. So to have somebody, pop up with a pizza truck 250 feet from Renzo's, I think is absurd.
Mr. Chairman.
point of information,
State your point.
Mr. Chairman. I think Salem is in the same category as us. They have a lot of tourists, even though they don't have a beach. I think $500 is reasonable. I think $1,000 is really too much. So
Okay, we're not going to have further with on that. We're going to leave it as is, and because right now people are trying to start up a business, do food trucks, and what's going on with the coronavirus. We need to give everyone a fighting chance to get back on their feet. So I say we should leave the fee as it is and make amendments further down the road. Let everyone get back to their routine, and then we'll look into it for in the future. How does that sound? Everyone agree on that?
yeah,
Well, I see it as a
Are you okay with that,
disadvantage
Councilor Powers?
and an advantage to the food
Okay,
trucks.
so
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
okay, so
The
we're
people,
gonna
the people
we're
that
going to change that
are,
amount to 500, and then we're going to do a roll call.
Mr. Chairman, point of information, Mr. Chairman.
State your point.
Mr. Chairman,
State your
Mr.
point.
Thank you. I was gonna say, a lot of people who own food trucks, tend to be local people, maybe not all from Revere, but I think people who operate and run food trucks, they're, how should I say it, that it's, they might not have the capital to open a brick and mortar restaurant, and they want to provide a service, but 500, that sounds reasonable, but 1,000 or anything more than 500, I feel would be unreasonable to the little guy that's just trying to make a little bit of a living.
You have your local residents looking to start up a business, and they don't have the sufficient funds that it would normally cost to open up a brick and mortar. So I think that's the comparison you're looking at. Someone looking to start up a business, and they don't have sufficient funds to start up a brick and mortar, so they start out small with a food truck. So,
Mr. Chairman,
majority of the subcommittee would like to do that fee at 500. City clerk, can you change that to $500? And then we'll take a roll call with the amendment.
Changing the application fee from 200 to 500, correct?
Oh, Councilor Novoselsky? Councilor Novoselsky?
oh, thank you for the floor. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor
sorry I
Novoselsky
came
would like
in-
to speak? Sorry about that.
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
Cannot. We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
No.
You're cutting in and out, Ira.
I'm here. I'm not on mute. Oh, no.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good, thank you. Sorry I came in late, Mr. Chairman, and I know I'm not on the committee, but there's a item number 4 on 5.10.05 and locations, Garfield Avenue.
Can hear
It
you.
says west side
Council,
only,
we cannot hear
north of
you.
Centennial Ave.
Council, we cannot hear you. Counselor, we cannot hear you at all.
Are you
I
on
keep
mute?
on looking
I
at
don't know why.
because
I'm not muted.
Paul is texting me.
And I don't know.
Are you on mute?
It's very staticky. It's in and
I'm
out.
not muted.
Can everyone else mute their microphones except Ira Novoselsky?
How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. As I was saying, item number 4 on locations, Garfield Avenue. It says west side only, north of Centennial Ave and south of Shirley Ave. I'm not going to talk about the numbers, but that's right on a curve coming out of Orr Square, and it's a no parking zone. And it's, I don't think that's a good spot for it. So I wouldn't like to see what there. I would like to add, if I can, at Sandler Square, on North Shore Road between Centennial Ave and DeHone Street, two food trucks at that location. So it's the east side of North Shore Road between Centennial and DeHone Street.
Okay.
Those are 2 corrections. I have one question. I don't know if it's to Mr. Mara or to Dimple. Are ice cream trucks part of food trucks? Anybody answer that?
No,
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 go ahead.
Is an ice cream truck a food truck?
No,
no,
No.
No.
it is not. It is not. Paul Capizzi had some research on that. There's a specific definition of what constitutes an ice cream truck. And in this ordinance, I believe somewhere in here, there's a specific exclusion of ice cream trucks.
Okay,
ice cream trucks are not stationary, as food trucks are. So ice cream
well,
trucks have a different designation that they move around, and that they have to move every, I think, 15 to 30 minutes. They cannot stay in an idle position at any given time. They have to stay driving.
okay.
Thank you for that clarification. City
And
City
may,
Clerk
and
Melvin,
may,
can
and
you
may I add,
add
Mr.
Ira
Chairman?
Novoselsky's amendments, please?
I need Ira excuse me, Councilor Novoselsky to repeat it one more time. The connection was bad. I just want to make sure I'm getting it correct.
Okay, item number 4 will be removed.
Done. Okay, very good.
Garfield Ave, and we're gonna add, whether you place it or not, North Shore Road,
North Shore Road. Yep.
east side,
East side.
yep, between Centennial Ave and DeHone Street. And
Between.
that'll cover Sandler Square. 'Cause
Okay.
we have events then.
And, okay, I've got that. And Councilor
Okay.
Morbido, I just want to let you know that there are 2 residents that had their hands raised and would like to speak.
The chairman, I'd like to finish, if I may. If I may,
Let me see.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you. And I think it was mentioned that items 1 and 2 also need DCR permits. Is that correct? To Mr. Mara or Dimple? Even though they get permits.
Right, anything that's down the boulevard or on Ocean Avenue needs, in addition to any permits they get from the city, also need permission from the DCR.
Okay.
And we've been in conversation with DCR. They are have been involved with this process with preparing for our ordinance and also giving us permission to have food trucks on the beach at the designated locations in the ordinance, and that they would have a separate application process. Once food trucks if approved by our license commission, they would have to apply separately to the DCR, but prove a license from the city of Revere to qualify for that application process, and also pay for that application. And DCR will be involved with the city and helping with monitoring that situation there.
Thank you, Ms. Rana. Anyone else have anything to say? We're cutting close on time. Actually, we're a little bit over.
Mr. Chairman, one more.
I'm going to ask a couple of the attendees to speak.
One more thing, Mr. Chairman.
Joe
Mr.
Gravellisi.
Chairman, one more item, please.
Counselor, what's your item?
I agree with Council Zambuto about the price, but I also agree with Council Serino. $500 is a good number, reasonable number to apply to this. So that's it for me. Thank you.
If the city clerk will note that. And I'm calling on the attendees. Joe Gravellisi, are you there?
I think I should be unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Joe Gravellisi, 37 Sweeney Ave, number 2, in Revere. Thank you guys for taking this up. I'm really supportive of and excited by the idea of having food trucks in Revere. And I think that the dialogue around doing it right is important and appreciated. But I do want to ask that when you think about these amendments around cuisine and things like this, that you be careful to not create negative consequences from good intentions. For instance, if a food truck is selling meatball subs and there's a place across the street that's brick and mortar, that's a pizza place, and they decide that they've defined that as Italian cuisine and they want to box out someone from selling meatball subs across the street, you just want to be careful, with the way that you craft language like that. The other thing that I would want to be careful of is, for instance, we have a very well-known food truck that's very popular in the greater Boston area that sells grilled cheese sandwiches. And if they start, camping out and doing business on Broadway, and mortar places says, well, we've decided to add grilled cheese to our menu, is that, I feel like that's something that you need to be careful of if you're going to craft an amendment around trying to define which cuisine these places can operate. Because as far as I'm aware, and Maggie might be able to clarify, I believe the license commission cannot take into account, when you're permitting like a brick and mortar restaurant, if there's another restaurant of the same kind nearby, that's not allowed to be a factor, right? The city is not allowed to pick winners and losers in terms of competition. So I understand that when you're introducing a new type of business, you want to be careful, but just, be mindful of things like that. The other thing too, in terms of supporting our brick and mortar existing businesses.
So if you can hurry up with your statement, we're running over on time and there's a couple more people who need to speak.
Sure. Just if you ask any Main Streets organization, when you create a more vibrant dining scene that has more foot traffic and more people coming out, it actually lifts all boats and helps create a better scene and better business for everyone. And the last quick bit is that you can't really compare the fees on something like a food truck to something that's there year round, because food trucks tend to pay fees in 7, 8, 9 different cities, rotate around. They're there in one city, like, maybe they're going to be in Revere on Thursdays for 6 months. And so I get the dialogue there, but you can't quite compare it to the fee structure for something that's there all year round. Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you. So you're on record as a proponent, correct?
Absolutely. And thank you and have a good one.
Okay. Next attendee, Liana. Liana? Okay, let's try the next one. Liana, are you there? Okay.
Liana?
Valentina? Dimple, can you unmute yourself, please? Valentina? Okay, we're going to take a roll call if there's no more attendees that would like to speak.
They have their hands raised and their microphones are on. There is
Okay,
Valentina
let's try this
Moreno.
one more time. Valentina, are you there?
This is Diana.
Okay, Diana, how are you?
Very well. Hello, everybody. It's very nice to see you all in this new innovation thing with the Zoom. I'm very happy that we are together, and I just would like to add that food trucks will be a great addition to the city because it will promote entrepreneurs and it will give us residents of Revere a taste from different types of food, honoring the improvements and diversity that Revere has so far. So I'm very happy for it. This is a very good innovation, and the youth are the future. So we have to, create all these new innovation things. Plus, in Revere, there is like the first beach of America, public beach of America. So I like it very much.
Thank you. You'll stand as a proponent for this, correct?
Yes, I am in favor in that.
And I don't see any more, there are more hands raised. Esther? Esther? Esther, can you hear me?
Yes. You hear me?
Yep. Are you a proponent or opponent?
Hi, good afternoon, Miss. I want to know if I can have this for for Bill in Revere.
I'm going to come back to, we're cutting short on time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call you. So whoever's listening, all the attendees, I'm going to call your name, and please state whether you're a proponent of the food truck ordinance or an opponent. We're cutting into the next meeting, so I just need to know if you're a proponent or opponent. If you want to make a brief sentence for a statement, that would be fine. Olga, are you a proponent or opponent? I'm sorry. There's technical difficulties. Can you guys all hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
City Clerk, can you just do the roll call, please?
Sure, the resident that you did want to speak with has an older version of Zoom, but on the ordinance as amended, Councilor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sereno.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Keefe.
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Morbido.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
the
you,
motion-
members, for coming.
The city ordinance relative to food trucks as amended will be forwarded to the full city council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anybody on that could hear me?
I hear you, Ira.
Yes.
Oh, sound any better?
It's much better.
Yes. Hey, Steve. So,
Ash, are we staying on this Zoom connection, or do we have to go to another one?
no, everyone, you guys are all good. We're on the same meeting. We'll just stay on the same Zoom link throughout all meetings, okay?
Oh, great, okay. Okay, so I guess, are we ready to start the zoning subcommittee? We'll wait for Ashley.
Sure, it's five, it's after five.
Sorry about that, Counselor.
Okay, so this is the June 8th meeting of the zoning subcommittee. You want to call the roll, please, Madam Clerk?
Sure, roll call of the zoning subcommittee, Counselor Janino?
Here.
Here, Counselor Guanasso?
Here,
Here, Counselor Morabito? Is absent. Counselor Visconti?
Here.
Here, Morabito's here.
Counselor Morabito's here. Counselor Visconti's here. Counselor Keith?
Here.
Here. And Chairman Zambuto?
Here,
Here, quorum is present.
great. So I'd like to take the 20151 out of order, if that's okay.
Sure, so that is, that is on the application of Bernard Schramm, trustee of the 257 Washington Avenue Realty Trust for the purpose of considering the discontinuance and abandonment of a certain portion of Lincoln Street as illustrated on the petitioner's plan.
So I was hoping that Don Charamello was in attendance. Is he?
Don't see him.
I emailed him a link, Counselor.
Okay, so, because if he's not here, it kind of, it fouls up my reason for going out of order. So I guess, I guess we might as well just move on to the
Mr.
regular.
Chairman.
Council Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was with the city engineer this morning, and at this location, in this street, that's a paper street, has a main water pipe going through it.
I know that, yes.
I wouldn't vote this right now unless we had the clearance of all the departments.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
And there is a going through there, and they're not sure if it's going to be abandoned or not. But I'd still need, I would still want clearance from Mr. Charamello and Mr. Agenzio and the city engineer before we let this property go.
I agree. So I had a lengthy conversation with Donnie Charamello. There's a plan in the works, and there's going to be an order of conditions. My biggest concern was that the taxpayer would not be on the hook for any of this, and they won't be, I'm assured. And so we will hold this in committee. I see the attorney is here. Attorney Rose, do you want to add something to this?
Yes, I've had some calls with Mr. Chiramello today as well, and I just have to say, first off, a real gentleman. They've been great in getting down to this property and investigating it. From what he told me, at least in terms of his department, they would like to see this pipe abandoned. It was seemingly disconnected in a way, or shut from the main water system in a way that kind of left it exposed. And if somebody were to reopen it, it could cause major damage to Route 1, which I don't think anybody wants to see. And at this point, we had come up with some language that for the committee's review on how the petitioner would be conditioned to cut and cap these pipes in a way that was only with the proper permits and only under the direction of the Water and Sewer Department, so that it was properly disconnected and there were no future issues associated with this pipe. That was the last word I had on the matter today. As you had stated, I believe Don was going to try to log on as well. I don't know if we want to potentially move this or just to hold it for a few moments to see if he's able to make it. Well, take the first item.
I don't have a problem with holding it. It's probably going to go to the next meeting anyway, because then we'll be able to see the order of conditions. And I know that you've graciously already agreed to assume any of the costs that we're already into it for. Mm-hmm. And the future cost of any of the work that needs to be done there, because the last thing we want is to put the taxpayers on the hook for any of this. So, again, I appreciate your cooperation, and the praise for Donnie Charamello is well taken, because we all feel the same way here, I think. And so I see my council president looking to speak. So, Council Keefe.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, and I understand that it's going to be held. I have a question. I see Paul's on the call. Is in us abandoning this land in times of giving up portions of land, is there going to be some reimbursement to the city if this does go through? We just keep giving this out of the generosity of our hearts. There's obviously a project that's going to happen there. Someone's going to make money off that land. Is the city just going to let it go, or what's the deal with that? Not sure, Paul, you can answer that, or?
Quite frankly, Patrick, I'm not that familiar with this project. I don't even know how much land we're actually abandoning. So maybe Corey can clarify exactly what we're giving up and what's going to happen with the land. So we may be recovering costs through taxes after. I'm not sure what's going on exactly. I apologize for not knowing as much.
Okay, maybe we can answer that by the next time this is heard.
I see Council Novoselsky has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've dealt with this before. We had one on Fenno Street where we did about 10 years ago, and we had to change our minds because of the water line and the utilities going through it. But it's my understanding that even though we abandon it, what we're doing is authorizing the sale of the property for someone to buy it. But the abutters would have a better call on it because they are abutters. So there would still have to be a sale property. So that's my understanding. Thank you.
Well, it appears that I'm happy that we're holding this thing. So I'm
You were frozen for a second, Counselor.
Oh, I apologize. It tells me I had an unstable connection for some reason. Do any other councilors want to speak? Councilor Granato, you're muted, sir. Unmute yourself. There you go.
I certainly think in the past, we've placed values on these properties that we turn over from the city to the private sector. We also should do it the right way by offering it out to the immediate neighborhood. To maybe there's another interested person who might suggest that they might look for this property. So, and I think holding it in committee, we're in no hurry to do anything with it anyway. And we need the safeguards of all the department heads to tell us really what the value is, and also what's going through that property that pertains to the community. So I think it serves a good purpose to table this and subsequently talking about it in the next few meetings.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
I do know the department heads are actively looking at this right now. I actually got an email from Nick Rystrom at the moment, just suggesting some additional language for the condition. I'm asking if anyone's able to possibly come on to the meeting to give you that direct feedback. I know from my client's perspective, he is trying to put some things in place rather soon, and another month could be damaging to that. I understand there's you have your duties up to uphold.
Well, I believe that, I've had discussions with Robert O'Brien, and I know everybody's actively involved in this. Mm-hmm. I don't think waiting until the 22nd is gonna kill anything. So
it would be this month. It would be I didn't realize that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we could have another zoning meeting on the 22nd. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Okay, it is. So, okay. So that would be the holdup, which would not be too long.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're going to move on to the next piece of business. This will remain in committee until the 22nd. Madam
All right.
Clerk,
Thank you very much, councilors.
thank you.
Sure. So the next item on the agenda is the small cell wireless antenna ordinance.
Okay, so who wants to go first here?
I might as well.
Looks like Council Visconti and then Council Guanasso.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first thank Deputy Cheever and City Solicitor Paul Capizzi for being here, present in this meeting. I've gotten some calls regarding this from some residents that are alarmed, concerned about this amendment. So I just would like to clarify for those people, and then hopefully you can help me clarify some of the issues that have come up. So I have a couple of questions that I want to bring to you, and I'm sure nothing
Right ahead.
that is a problem. First, the fees. It seems as though we're giving the house away, as they say, and $100, I think, per antenna seems a bit cheap, inexpensive, and was wondering why that amount has been chosen. Is there any flexibility with that, first and foremost?
The short answer is no. We've got Attorney Capizzi here and the city clerk who are well versed in this. There are federal fees that dictate this and federal laws that dictate all of this. So I'll let either Attorney Capizzi or our distinguished clerk.
That's correct, Councilor Zambuto. The non-recurring fee for which the feds have accepted sort of standard across the country is $500 for a permit for up to 5 permit applications, and then for up to 5 antennas on one application, and then $100 for anything beyond the 5. That is the one-time fee that we are allowed, or we will be charging, presumably if this is passed, for any application permit to install a small cell antenna. There's also an access fee in the right-of-way on city poles, $270 annually. As written now, it's just for city-owned poles. I would like to look a little more into this. It could be for any pole in the right-of-way. I don't know what other communities are doing, but I think some are charging $270 regardless of whose pole it goes on, whether it's a Verizon-owned pole, the National Grid-owned pole, or a city-owned pole. But that would be annually. But those are the fees that are sort of set by the FCC, or at least the ones they feel do not interfere with the installation and laying out of the 5G network.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just continue
Right ahead.
in terms of the height restrictions, the 7 feet, I believe, from any habitable structure. Are those set restrictions as well, guided by the federal government?
Not per se, no. Those are some of the things that we're allowed to look at and decide ourselves. And we've got some input when drafting this ordinance, Paul Cheetah and myself and Bob Mara. We got some input from Verizon and I think another company called Externet, which proposed the 7-foot distance. Some wanted it further, some wanted it closer. We sort of settled on that number. So that number is flexible. There are things within that ordinance that are flexible. Essentially what's going on here, the reason we're doing this is because with the original ordinance, which was the telecommunications ordinance that we had, required that anybody wanting to put up such a device had to go for a special permit. That's governed by Chapter 48, the zoning act, which requires a public hearing within 65 days, and then you, as the special permit granting authority, have another 90 days to act. That was too much time, a total actually of 155 days, which conflicts with what the federal government determined was the better course of action, which was 60 days for the most part. So by taking it away from the council and putting it right into the building department and the fire department, we can move more quickly on accepting these permits, processing them, and letting them install their 5G antennas. So bear in mind, there's a federal comprehensive statutory scheme that regulates all telecommunications and wireless networks. And that's kind of what we're following here. 5G is recognized as an upgrade to benefit all Americans. So we cannot impede deployment of the 5G network. We must work within the guidelines that the feds put out so that it can be laid out, rolled out in Revere, and quite frankly, across the country. Every city and town is dealing with the same thing and is subject to pretty much the same regulations. So that's all we're doing, is we're just trying to comply with the federal regulations, yet have some say on height, exactly where they go, but also not impede the ultimate rollout of the 5G network, which is supposed to benefit everybody.
All right. Well, I understand our hands are tied to some degree, and there are residents out there that are really concerned about it. And I want to thank you for being here and at least explaining what we can and what we can't do. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Visconti. Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are any of the proponents here to address these questions? Because they were requested to be here, and I had 7 questions that I have 8 locations, by the way, Mr. Chairman. And I only asked once.
I can stop you for a second, Councilor. The antennas you're talking about are not what we're discussing here tonight. Those are the 25 special permits that were filed at the last meeting. Those are not on the table tonight. This is an ordinance governing small cell antennas for the future. So this is not the other ones. There'll be another day to discuss them. This is just the ordinance change, taking it and so we can actually follow the law instead of extending these a long time and so forth and so on.
Thank you.
Councilor Janino, I think, had her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's really important that we get this ordinance passed as soon as possible, because often, as you saw in the last meeting, the council is flooded with these requests, and I don't believe it's the appropriate place. So I think this ordinance will help get city business organized, and I'm looking forward to seeing it go before the council sooner rather than later. Thank you. Thank you,
Councilor Janino. Whose hand is up? Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm inquiring about item number 3 on page 5A. About the modifications. It's on section D, number 3, section E, paragraph above. The last line in that paragraph states, additional permits shall not be required for general maintenance, repair, or modification of a previously permitted small cell facility. I can understand general maintenance and repair, but I'm questioning the word modification. They can claim upgrading from a 4G to a 5G or a 5G to a 6G if it ever happens. But they can claim that's a not a replacement of an existing tower that's going to be there. So we're just questioning that one line on the word modification. So I know it's a very gray area, but I would think that a replacement of a small cell facility with another small cell is a replacement, not a modification. So I'm just questioning that one word on the modification word. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to address that, Councilor?
Yes, me.
I'm asking you, Attorney.
It's a sort of a common term used in a lot of ordinances that require some change. It doesn't mean replacing it with the new one. It means modifying the existing one. So it would still have to comply with the ordinance in terms of its size and its location. I understand what Council's saying. If they require a new one, then it says in that same section that an additional permit would be required for a replacement of the small cell in an existingly approved location, and that would be a $100 fee tax. So we can look at the word and say it's a gray area, but it means maintenance might mean oiling it, repairing might mean it's broken, modifying might mean adding a screw in it that it didn't have before. So I don't know the technical stuff well enough, but I'm comfortable with that language unless Paul Stevens feels more strongly.
I'll pass, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Council McKenna has her hand up.
thank you very much. I'd like to amend to this ordinance a couple of things that weren't put on there. In the federal guidelines, you can't put small cells next to a school, a church, parks, and so on. I would like to put also that they can't locate it officially in a designated wildlife area, such as the marsh. And also where to amend to put to not put next to threatened and endangered species, which we do have in Revere. We have birds that are endangered species, and putting a small cell next to a wildlife sanctuary like the marsh would be really terrible. So I'm asking to put an amendment in this ordinance.
I'm not sure it's legal. I'd have to get legal advice on that. Councilor Attorney Capizzi, can you address that?
That is problematic. Bear in mind that this ordinance addresses putting small cell antenna in the public way. You're not putting it in any place that's designated as environmental preserve or anything like that. It's going in a public way, which means it's already in a pole that already exists on a paved street. It's maybe near a home. So it's hard to us to take the position that it's harmful to the environment beyond that immediate vicinity. So I think if we were to adopt such an amendment, it would challenge, we would likely not succeed in defending that amendment.
Okay, so abutting a marsh would be, it's fine, as long as it's on a public pole.
They're all, as far as I know, these are always going to be put on public ways. If any provider came to us and said they wanted to stick a pole right out in the marsh, I think we'd be well within our right to say, no, it can't go there.
And
But
what about, excuse me, and what about if it was a public pole right next to a school, or a public pole that's right next to a church, or a public pole that's right next to a senior citizen facility, and so on and so on and so on? We're allowing this to happen.
Deputy, I see your hand up. 1 second. Let her finish.
When the FCC does state in their regulations that you cannot put them in near churches, near schools, in parks. And so we're gonna allow a pole right next to a school to have a small cell or a 5G.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Okay.
I know, Chairman Zambudo, I'm just stating the facts.
I think we got it. I think I got your facts. I was going to ask the experts to give me some feedback, and Deputy Chiva had his hand up, and I want him to speak.
Okay, thank you.
So I read through quite a bit of the FCC documentations looking for those particular type things, and I didn't find them. Maybe I missed them. If you have those, I would appreciate you if you could share them with me, because I'm looking for those specific things to make sure that we were able to exclude those things. The legislation clearly speaks to the public way, and it can be on an existing pole, or they can install a pole as long as it's within the public way. And matter of fact, it actually even calls out the fact that you can exclude those type of places as long as there's a public way. So I'd like to see what you found, and we can probably go through that together and see if we can incorporate something if it is in fact correct.
Okay, so then if we're going to do that, then I'm not going to vote tonight for this to pass.
There we go. So okay, so you get another 25 permits next meeting. That's fine.
Mr. Zambudo, please be nice to me. I'm trying to make sure that people in wildlife, and you're very into the dogs. I'm trying to make sure that everybody's going to be safe with these. I know you and I differ with the same, with if they're good or bad, but I'm just want to make sure that this is safe for the people, for the children, for elderly people. You got my message. So please be
I
nice to
I
me.
got your message very clearly, Counselor. I'm trying to
Please,
follow the
so,
federal law.
as the chairman, please be nice to me. Thank you. You're on mute.
I frozen again.
I couldn't hear anything, so I just wanted to remind
I
everyone, Council,
apologize. Counselor Janino?
if you're not speaking, please mute your computer because I'm getting a lot of feedback and I couldn't hear Councilor Zambuto speaking because of how much feedback there was. So if everyone can please mute, just a friendly reminder.
Okay, so, you know, I know that Attorney Capizzi and the deputy chief and a lot of people have spent a lot of time going through the rules and regulation on this before they drafted this. This wasn't drafted overnight. There's been a lot of months involved, a lot of hard work involved in this. And, you know, we saw that we got 25 permits, special permits before us a couple weeks ago. And this is, and those permits are going to violate the federal laws because they probably won't get acted on fast enough. So, you know, I think the Council President, you have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to ask, well, I see Deputy Cheever's hand is raised. I was just curious if Deputy Cheever had if he was a proponent or an opponent of this, for the record. I just wanted to know. And then there's an attendee with their hand raised as well that wanted to speak. Thank you.
So, as you know, the fire department was pretty vocal at the beginning of this. And that's why the chief kind of gave me a lot of latitude to get into reading all the requirements from the FCC. And through the chair of Council McKenna, if you had someone that was trying to find something in that regulation to zone it out, I was your guy. And I went through a lot of things trying to find areas where we could zone it out and try to not allow it in certain areas. There's nothing in there. It's really difficult. Paul Capizzi and I and others have grabbed a lot of ordinances from other towns that spent a lot of legal counsel time and money to develop their ordinances. We're able to grab some information from there. We've had a lot of correspondence with those communities too to see what they had. I'm pretty comfortable with what we put together here. Probably just a couple of minor tweaks based on input from this body. We've had a lot of installations breathing down our throat. So I am a proponent for this ordinance as it is put together, with the exception of probably the 7 feet. I really do think we should revisit that, and that should be a further distance. I've looked at a lot of their reports, and based on those reports, I went back into the FCC regulations on how to generate those reports and make sure I was comfortable with the numbers they were showing. And their numbers are way below the action thresholds. So at this point, I'm cautiously optimistic that I think we're going in the right direction with this ordinance.
Thank you. Councilor Serino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Cheever just basically said what I was about to say. Just circling back to Councilor Visconti's point and to Attorney Capizzi's response, if we could increase that 7 feet, I think that would allay some of the fears of some residents who had reached out to me, especially if it was just a kind of not out of thin air, but if it was just a standard number. If we could increase that, anywhere between 10 and 15 feet, I think that would allay a lot of fears. I know I'm not a member of the zoning committee, but my 2 cents
Okay.
for what residents have called. So thank you.
Great. We've all gotten a lot of calls, and I appreciate that. Attorney Capizzi.
The problem with the number is it's somewhat arbitrary. You don't want to make it so that if you have a street where 5G is required and all the poles are, say, within 6 feet of all the residences, that you then cannot put a small cell antenna on that street. That's the concern. That number came from one of the, actually we had a lower number. Another company, I think it was Verizon, wanted a much longer joint, I wanted 15 feet. Extinet came back and said, no, 7 feet is fine. So I just put it in there. I actually don't know enough out there in the streets, and Paul Cheever may know more, how close we relatively can expect a small cell antenna to get to a resident's home, up on the second floor, that is. You know, they're going to be up high. They're not going to be at the ground level. So we just want to make sure that we don't unintentionally make it so that no small cell antenna can be placed in a particular area of the city. We do have an older city. We have some poles that are very close to homes. I
I
understand.
see you, Deputy. We'll get to you. Okay, Deputy. Paul, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
So I love you, Paul. We worked hard together on this, but the near, it's called near field and far field. So when they do the measurements of the RF, they do it with far field estimates of the near field. So even though it's an arbitrary number, it kind of really isn't. I think we have enough that we could increase that, and a lot. Maybe we need to get a little more creative and make it 10 feet and allow them to appeal that distance with the director of municipal inspections. If they're saying, hey, look, I'm 25 feet in the air and I'm 10 feet and that house is, it's only a single family home, a single story building, and this is going to be above it, and maybe allow an appeal process to be worked out with the Inspectional Services Division. But I'm more comfortable with a higher number and allowing an appeal.
Okay, thank you. I think I have an attendee with their hand raised. Is Larry Washington there? Or is that who I am? Hello? Madam Clerk, do you know who's raising their hand? Or?
Yes, I just promoted Mr. Washington to a panelist. He should be able to speak now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. My name is Larry Washington, and I'm a senior counsel for Regulatory Affairs for Extinet. And I was at the council meeting, the last meeting. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that we're supportive of the ordinance. There are a couple tweaks, I think, to make it more consistent with the the FCC order that has been referenced this evening during the meeting. And I'm appreciative of the fact that the members are seeking to comply with the federal regulations. I understand also that there are obviously some concerns regarding the distance, setback distance. As we'd indicated, we do have an RF engineer available who can, and typically the setback distance is an issue of exposure and safety. And we do have an RF engineer that can speak to what's appropriate or a safe distance in terms of these antennas, if you would like to hear from him this evening.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, our RF engineer is Chris Frederick, and I believe he is online and available.
Can you promote him?
Yes, I'm promoting him right now. Hold on. Mr. Frederick can speak. If he can unmute himself. There we go.
There we go. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Chris Frederick. I'm a senior RF engineer with Extinet. I've been in this field for almost 35 years. And the last 10 years or so, I've been designing and supporting these small cell networks. First ODAS and now small cells, and eventually at some point 5G. The question, the setback question that you guys are discussing, it's dependent on a lot of factors. You can't just state 7 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet. A lot is dependent on the type of equipment that's running, the power of that equipment, and the type of antennas that are deployed. And in some cases, a carrier could choose a very directional antenna and steer it away from the building, and the safe distance to the antenna it's basically non-existent. I mean, there's no danger at all. And how we govern this, how we make sure that we comply, the FCC has a set of standards, emissions exposure limits that we actually run reports on every single node that we deploy everywhere. Again, based on the configuration of each of those locations. So it's really, it's not necessarily about distance, it's about FCC compliance with exposure limits.
Okay, well, that convinces me that somewhere written in this ordinance is that it complies with FCC regulations. Is that correct, Attorney Capizzi?
I mean, I think so. In fact, that 7-foot number came from Extenet, from one of their drafts. And I understand that the height and all the RF stuff, I don't understand it really, but I get that you can't simply say it's at 7 feet, it's at 10 feet. It could be maybe dangerous, if I understand Mr. Frederick, it could potentially be dangerous at 10 feet and not dangerous at all at 6 feet. So I guess it depends a lot on the equipment and where it's going. But we wanted to come up with some number so that because poles are out in front of homes and just give the public and ourselves some idea of what the distance might or may not be from a property out to the street.
I wouldn't have a problem with it saying 7 feet, provided it meets FCC regulations. Deputy, you had your hand up again, Paul? You're muted.
No, I am. I'd like a question through the chair to Chris. So Chris, the problem I have, and this is why I'm for the 7 to 10 feet, is all the reports that I've read talk about known exposure and the unknown exposure of the person passing through the field. None of the reports talked about a chronic exposure of an antenna being out in front of someone's window in front of their house 7 feet away. Well, it's there. Well, that's where they live, and they're there for multiple hours a day. So I don't think it's an arbitrary number. In addition to that, the regulations I'm reading, correct me if I'm wrong, these measurements are based on far field readings where you estimate near field because you don't have a clear reading in the near field. So those are estimates. So I don't think a 7 or a 10 foot spacing from a building is an arbitrary number. I think it's a safe number based on the potential unknown that is coming off of your antenna.
Well, again, you say an unknown, but there's a lot of sophisticated modeling out there now. When we do these reports, we have them run by licensed practicing engineers who basically are liable if they're wrong. They're always very, very conservative in nature. Again, it's not, I don't want to say it's arbitrary. I mean, I can think of one example where you would want to state a distance, and it really has nothing to do with RF. It has to do with if the antenna is close to a window, whether or not the resident could actually lean out of the window and then become close enough for it to be a problem. But as far as actually stating the report saying, for example, this configuration, the safe distance is 10 feet, as long as you state, as long as that resident couldn't actually get within 10 feet, it's not a problem, if that makes sense.
So again, through the chair, so when we had these meetings and we had another RF specialist sit in the meeting with us and said, he wouldn't want it any closer than 12 feet to his window.
Again, that could have been
what he was talking about.
That could have been based on whatever configuration he was looking at. Again, I am speaking in general terms. If
may I interrupt?
No. I see your hand up, George. Just let them finish and then I'll call you.
Yeah, I mean,
go on.
Oh, go ahead.
So the other point is, I put in an hour on which got struck out from all you guys is that it had to be an independent person. your RF engineer that's saying this is all set is on the liability is from your office. So there's not an independent look at this. So I have a little bit of an issue with that. Look, we're trying to move this forward. We're in agreement with it. It needs to be here. It's part of the future. But I think a little concession with the distance to make the public feel safe and to make us feel safe, whether it's a factor safety of 10 versus a factor safety of 5, I think it's a small concession.
Councilor Rotundo.
Thank you, Council President. Excuse me. Thank you, Councilor Zambudo. Through you to Mr. Frederick. You know, one of the things that I remember being a nurse is that what we know today can change tomorrow. And I understand you're talking about the issue of, I think it was Lieutenant Chief is talking about being conservative. So first question is this product able to turn into a 5G? And is it capable of doing that? Are you able to go from this 4G to 5G?
No, the equipment that's being proposed is 4G only. 5G equipment is a completely different animal. It's a different box, different everything.
Right. And so my other question is to Mr. Washington. Is there any plan, Attorney Washington, excuse me, sir, is there any plan for your company to go and put in a 5G in the future?
For these particular locations, and I don't mean to overly lawyer it, but at this particular time, there are no plans to upgrade these facilities to 5G.
George, if I can interrupt for a second here. This is not about the 25 special permits that were up before us before. This is just simply for the ordinance change. This has nothing to do with the permits that are before us. This is for the future.
No,
So-
I understand that, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, so I mean,
it's
it's
before I vote on anything.
not relevant to me or to this discussion tonight. This is simply about the new ordinance.
Thank you.
And 4 and
Mr.
5
Chairman.
doesn't mean anything. Councilor Sereno.
Mr. Chairman, point of information. I just wanted to say that, you know, I understand you're saying it has nothing to do with the 25, but the two experts on the call, with the two experts in the field, Mr. Washington and Mr. Freeberg, they're with Extenet, which is the company that is supposed to be 25. So how can the city be, you know, they have business pending before the city, and we're looking to them for advice on writing the ordinance that's going to regulate them. They're not.
I don't want to say, I'm going to interrupt you because I don't want to say it's irrelevant, but it is. So we're not taking what they say. We've already done, as far as I'm concerned, the deputy chief, the city solicitor, and all the other people that are involved in this have already done the work that we considered for this ordinance. This is just some opinions, just like anybody else that was in the audience for this meeting is offering an opinion. You don't have to take their word as expert testimony because.
But you took the 7 feet was from Extenet. The 7 feet recommendation was Extenet.
That was there was Verizon. There were many people who offered comment during the 6 months or whatever this thing was in the works. So it's just another piece of information from one party. If it happened to be 7 feet, that was determined by the people that we charged with getting this right. Am I wrong, Deputy?
If I may, Mr.
You're correct, but to Chris again, he still didn't answer the question about chronic exposure. I get everything else, but all the reports I've read, they talk about known exposure and unknown exposure. And the unknown exposure is a time weighted of a person passing through a field. I get all that, but the FCC regulations also talk about chronic exposure, and I haven't seen a report that addresses that yet.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Who's got their hand up here? Okay, Councilor Visconti, I see you, Councilor Guanasso, you're right after him.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go ahead.
Deputy Chief makes some valid points here. And, you know, it makes me a little uneasy knowing that he's not comfortable with the 7 feet. Okay. And, you know, if we need to amend that, that number, then so be it. You know, I think there's residents that are watching that are concerned. That 7 feet is concerning as well. So the fact that Mr. Deputy Cheever is not that comfortable with that doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy, to be honest with you. And I'd have no problem adjusting the distance if need be.
Nor do I, except that if it makes us not in compliance with FCC regulations. That's why I said 7 feet. That's what, let me speak.
Go ahead.
That's why I said 7 feet are within FCC requirements, so that there's some flexibility there. If you want to make it 10 or whatever, I'm trying to comply with federal law here.
And I agree 100%, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And I'm not looking to hold this up by any stretch. I know we need to try to get this passed, but you know, the last thing I want to do is,
of course,
is make a decision that we are going to regret later on down the line. And if
I got it.
Deputy Cheever feels comfortable with 10 feet, then I think I feel as comfortable with that change as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, very briefly.
That connection is bad. Councilor Guanasso, I think my internet connection is.
Mr. Chairman, I completely agree with Deputy Cheevers. What he had to say was the most fact-finding we've had in information that I've heard in any proposal regarding the FCC regulations and how do we as a community safeguard our city. And I think what we ought to do is pay attention to what he had to tell us tonight and act upon his concerns. And I don't know about anyone being an expert, but I think he certainly sold me on what he had to say. And what he had to say was right within the guidelines, but yet stretching the point a little to protect the community. And what he had to offer, I agree with.
Okay, so Deputy, can I ask you, would you be comfortable with the 10-foot setback? Is that what we're saying here?
Great. That would be great.
Okay.
I would be comfortable with the 10-foot setback, but I would not be comfortable with your amendment of the FCC regulations. I rather have something in there that they can appeal it to the municipal inspections, and he may give it based on layout and so forth.
Okay, good. So there, I mean, I think that's easy.
Yes.
You put the 10 foot in there and we go from there. Attorney Capizzi, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, we can make whatever modifications that satisfies both the concerns that Paul raises in terms of public health and also make sure that we are still in compliance with the federal rules so that we're not impeding the actual installation.
I believe we are. Great. Okay, so that's where we're at. Do we need an amendment, Madam Clerk?
Yes, so this is section 17.16.115E, subsection 11. The proposed small cell facility shall not be installed at any location that is within 10 feet of any habitable structure or building, including residential, municipal, schools, and or businesses, provided it meets FCC regulations.
You want to call the roll for the committee, please?
Roll call on the ordinance as amended. Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Visconti?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Keith? Absent. Councilor Zambuto?
Yes.
Yes. The ordinance as amended will be forwarded to the full city council with a favorable recommendation.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. That concludes the zoning subcommittee for June 8th, 2020. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. I stepped off. I had to go retrieve the gavel usually brought to us. We're going to get started in a second, council. So if you're on, stay on. Let the room clear out. If everyone can just, I'm going to lower your hands and then we'll get this started.